My name is Griffin Tate, 36 years old, an ordinary man from Detroit who lives by the calloused hands of a mechanic. My job is tightening bolts, welding steel, wiping grease from morning till night in a noisy workshop that reeks of scorched metal. But what haunts me isn't engine oil, it's the scent of a loss that has never been willing to leave me. Brianna, my wife, has been gone for exactly 2 months and 17 days. She lost her battle with a cruel hereditary bone marrow disease. That illness wasn't loud or violent like cancer or a car crash. It simply silently drained the life out of a person little by little, like a candle slowly extinguished by a cold wind. I still remember the day the doctor delivered the final result. Brianna just squeezed my hand tightly and gave a faint smile. "Don't cry in front of Sophia, okay?" Then she fell asleep. Forever. Today is one of those rare weekends when I'm off work. I woke my daughter early. Her name is Sophia, 4 years old, with curly hair and blue eyes so much like her mother's that it hurts. She rubbed her eyes, still sleepy, and asked, "Daddy, are we going to visit Mommy today?" I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "Yeah, we're going to visit your mom." Sophia scampered off to find her favorite doll, the one Brianna had sewn for her just before her final hospital stay. Watching her, my heart twisted. Sophia is still too young to understand what death means, but she already misses her mother in her own way. Every time she sees white daisies, she shouts, "Mommy loves these flowers." We drove our old Ford to Rose Hill Cemetery, about half an hour from home. On the way, the radio played an old song Brianna loved. I quickly turned it off, afraid I wouldn't be able to hold myself together. Sophia sat in the back, kicking the front seat with her little feet, singing a children's song in her clear, cheerful voice. That innocent singing both warmed and stabbed my heart. I told myself I had to be strong, had to be her rock. But God, there were moments I just wanted to pull over and scream at the sky until all the rage and injustice inside me was spent. The cemetery appeared behind rusted iron gates. Autumn in Detroit is beautiful in a heartbreaking way. Golden leaves drifting down, a cold wind that cuts through the skin. I carried Sophia out of the car, my other hand holding a bouquet of white daisies, Brianna's favorite. She clung tightly to my hand, her short legs trying to keep up. "Daddy, slow down, I can't keep up." I smiled, bent down and lifted her into my arms. "Sorry, let Daddy carry his little princess." The path to Brianna's grave is tucked behind a row of tall pines. I know it by heart. I've come here every single week for the past 2 months. Each time I walk this leaf-covered dirt trail that crunches underfoot, my heart grows a little heavier. Sophia, on the other hand, likes the cemetery because there are so many pretty trees. I can't bring myself to tell her this is where people lie down forever. But today, as we rounded the final bend, I suddenly froze. In the distance, a man was kneeling in front of Brianna's grave. He was old, surely over 70, wearing a long black overcoat. His head was bowed low, his shoulders shaking as though he were fighting back sobs. His thin, gnarled hands rested on the marble headstone engraved with my wife's name, trembling, the bony fingers clutching as if trying to hold on to something slipping away. I heard him muttering, his voice hoarse and broken. "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." My heart felt like it was being crushed. Sophia, frightened, hugged my leg tightly and whispered, "Daddy, who is he?" I didn't answer right away, just placed a reassuring hand on her head, but I was shaking too. Who was he? Why was he kneeling at my wife's grave, crying like a man who had lost everything? 1,000 thoughts flashed through my mind. An old friend? A relative from her mother's side? But Brianna had never once mentioned a man who looked so tormented and worn by life. I took another step, trying to keep my voice steady. "Excuse me. This is my wife's grave. May I ask who you are?" The old man flinched as if struck, whipping around. His eyes were red and swollen, glistening with tears. His face was gaunt, deep lines carved by what looked like a lifetime of regret. When his gaze landed on me and Sophia, he froze for several seconds. Then he hurriedly wiped his tears with his sleeve in clumsy, panicked motions. Who are you?" I asked again, my voice sharper now, protective instinct kicking in. The old man avoided my eyes, stammering, I'm just an old friend of Brianna's. I heard she passed away, so I came." His voice shook, sounding like someone caught committing a terrible sin. He stood up unsteadily, his long coat flapping in the wind. I was about to press him. What kind of old friend grieves like a father who lost his child, when he suddenly turned and hurried away toward the cemetery gate. His steps were chaotic, stumbling like a drunkard's. Just before disappearing behind the row of red maple trees, he glanced back once more. That look, so heavy with pain and guilt that it sent a chill down my spine. Then he was gone. I stood rooted to the spot for several seconds, clutching the bouquet so tightly my knuckles turned white. Sophia tugged at my shirt. "Daddy, I saw him crying. Is he sad, Daddy?" I crouched down, hugged her close and whispered, "Yeah, baby, he must miss your mommy too." I slowly walked closer to Brianna's grave. The headstone was cold to the touch, her photo smiling as brightly as on our wedding day. I laid the flowers down and knelt exactly where the old man had been. The ground was still warm. He'd been there a while. Sophia skipped around picking wildflowers and placing them on the grave. "These are for you, Mommy." I forced a smile, but my mind was spinning. I racked my memory. At Brianna's funeral, I remembered every single face that came to pay respects. Friends, co-workers, a few distant relatives from my side. There wasn't a single old man who looked like him. Brianna had never spoken of any older friend. She grew up in Chicago. Her parents divorced when she was little. Her mother died young and her father, and she almost never mentioned him. Only once in the middle of the night when the pain was unbearable, she whispered, "I hate my dad, Griff. He chose money over family." I held her until she fell asleep and never dared ask more, afraid of reopening an old wound. So who was that old man? A creeping unease spread through my chest like poison smoke. I looked around the silent cemetery. The wind rustled the leaves like someone whispering behind me. Sophia pulled my hand. "Daddy, let's go home. I'm cold." I picked her up, kissed her cheek, but my eyes stayed fixed on the direction the man had vanished. On the drive home, I was silent. Sophia fell asleep in her car seat. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror and swore to myself I would never let Brianna's past hurt our daughter any further. Yet the image of that old man on his knees begging forgiveness haunted me every second. What did he know about my wife that I didn't? And why did he appear now, just when I was trying to piece together the shattered life of a father and his little girl? When we got home, I carried Sophia to bed and tucked her in carefully. Sitting beside my sleeping child, I took out my phone and scrolled through old photos. Our wedding, Brianna pregnant with Sophia, the three of us at the beach last year. I went through every album looking for any older face that might match the man at the cemetery. Nothing. Not a single photograph of anyone who resembled him. That night I lay awake. The Detroit wind outside sounded like someone crying. I got up several times to peer through the window, half expecting to see that long black coat in the darkness. Doubt, fear, and an unnamed dread filled me. The feeling that something hidden in Brianna's past was about to drag me and my daughter into an inescapable whirlwind. All I could do was clench my fists and whisper into the dark, "Whoever you are, if you ever hurt Sophia, I will never forgive you." Dawn broke over Detroit again, but the city remained as cold and gray as ever, wrapped in the familiar stench of steel and exhaust fumes. I woke at 6, warmed a bottle of milk for Sophia, zipped her into her tiny pink jacket, dropped her off at daycare, and then punched in at the shop at 7:15 sharp. My life at that point was like a machine running on nothing but black coffee and an endless ache for Brianna. It kept turning day after day without pause, but inside it was slowly wearing itself down to nothing. Every evening when I got home, I'd scoop Sophia into my arms, let her rest her head on my chest, and listen to her chatter about her teacher, her new friends, or how sad she was that her doll's dress had torn. I always smiled and nodded, but only one thought circled in my mind. I have to make more money, buy her new toys, save for the rainy days that always come without warning. I didn't dare look any further ahead. Looking too far only terrified me. Then one morning, disaster struck like a cold blade straight through the heart. I was standing beside the lathe, hands black with grease, ears ringing from the roar of engines, when my phone started vibrating nonstop in my pocket. Something told me to answer. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and picked up in a panic. Hello, is this Mr. Griffin? This is Sophia's homeroom teacher. Her voice was shaking with fear. I could hear children crying in the background. Sophia. Sophia suddenly spiked a very high fever, started coughing so hard she brought up blood, and then collapsed right on the classroom floor. The ambulance is taking her to Detroit Receiving Hospital right now. Can you come immediately? I don't remember what I said. I only remember the wrench slipping from my hand and clanging against the concrete so loudly the whole shop went quiet for a second. Everything froze, and then I ran. I ran past the machines, past the stunned faces of my co-workers, straight into the boss's office. Keegan Doyle was sipping coffee and reading the paper like he had all the time in the world. I stood panting in the doorway, voice trembling. Boss, my daughter just passed out at school. She's coughing up blood. They're rushing her to the ER. I have to go now. He looked up, his tiny eyes narrowing behind thick glasses, irritation written all over his face. Again, Tate? You took 2 days off last week because the kid was sick, and the week before that too. This place runs on teamwork, not your personal schedule. Lately you've been slacking hard. I was about to have a serious talk with you. I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart stopping. In my head there was only one image. My little girl lying on the classroom floor, blood pouring from her mouth. I bowed my head, my voice hoarse with desperation. Please, boss, just today. She's really critical this time. He waved me off coldly and went back to his newspaper as if I were invisible. Get out of here, but don't say I didn't warn you. One more time and you don't come back. I didn't wait another second. I bolted out of the office, out of the shop, and threw myself into my old Ford. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. When the engine finally roared to life, I floored it, running red lights, leaning on the horn through rush hour traffic. I called the teacher back. All I heard was sobbing. They're wheeling her into the ER now. I reached the hospital, half out of my mind. I sprinted down the sterile white corridors, the sharp smell of antiseptic making me dizzy. There she was, behind the glass wall of the emergency room, so tiny she looked like she could disappear at any moment. Her face was deathly pale, an oxygen mask covering most of it, IV lines running into her thin arms and legs. I pressed my palms against the glass, terror turning my blood to ice. The doctor came out, his face heavy with worry. He looked about 50, hair already gray, speaking slowly, but every word hit me like a hammer. You're Sophia's father, correct? I'm Dr. Ramirez. We've stabilized her heart rate and breathing for now, but the situation is extremely serious. Preliminary blood work shows signs of acute bone marrow failure, most likely hereditary aplastic anemia. Aplastic anemia. Those two words exploded in my head like thunder on a clear day. My whole body went numb. The same monstrous disease that stole Brianna from me was now coming for our little girl. I staggered back against the wall, ears ringing, vision blurring. I heard the doctor continue, but his voice sounded miles away. We need more specialized tests to confirm, but if it is hereditary, she'll require long-term treatment, possibly a bone marrow transplant. The costs will be enormous. You need to prepare yourself. I couldn't hear the rest. Suddenly, every memory flooded back, vivid as if it were yesterday. 2 years ago, Brianna first started feeling tired on a freezing winter afternoon. She complained of constant fatigue, bruises appearing out of nowhere, low-grade fevers at night. I told her to see a doctor, but she just laughed it off. Probably just anemia. Women get that all the time. She hid it from me for months, buying vitamins on her own, waking up in the night to cry silently from the pain. She was terrified of hospital bills, terrified we'd drown in debt, terrified I'd work myself to death trying to pay them. By the time I found out, it was far too late. She lay in that hospital bed, skin green pale, eyes sunken yet still forcing a smile. Don't sell the house, Griff. Don't take out loans with crazy interest. All I need is for you and Sophia to be okay. I cried. I screamed at doctors. I got on my knees and begged everyone I could think of for a matching donor. But there was none. No one in the registry matched Brianna. She died in my arms, her small hand squeezing mine one last time, whispering, Promise me. Protect Sophia, no matter what. Don't let her suffer like I did. I promised her, and I had already broken that promise. Since the day Brianna left, I've carried a guilt that never fades. I kept asking myself if I did enough, if there was some way I could have saved her that I missed. I hated myself for being useless, for failing to protect the woman I loved most. That wound never healed. And now Sophia, our daughter, was suffering from the exact same illness. I was paralyzed with terror at the thought of losing the only precious thing I had left. Dr. Ramirez placed a hand on my shoulder, pulling me back to the harsh present. Mr. Tate, did you hear me? Sophia needs to be admitted immediately and start treatment. Are you all right? I looked through the glass. Sophia's tiny chest rose and fell weakly beneath the white blanket. She was only 4 years old. She didn't even know how to spell the word death. I collapsed to my knees on the cold hospital floor, clutching my head. I didn't cry. I'd run out of tears the day Brianna died. There was only a sharp, tearing pain across my chest, as if someone were slicing me open one cut at a time. No, not again. I would not let this happen twice. I stood up, my voice hoarse but stronger than it had ever been. Doctor, do everything you possibly can. Save my daughter, whatever it takes. I'll find the money. Just save her. Dr. Ramirez looked at me with deep sympathy. We will do all we can. But you need to prepare for a very long, very expensive road, and the chances of finding a compatible marrow donor are extremely low. I nodded. I knew that pain all too well. I walked back to the glass, pressed my forehead against it, and whispered to my unconscious little girl on the other side, Sophia, can you hear Daddy? I'm sorry I couldn't protect your mommy, but this time I swear to you, even if I have to sell my blood, my kidneys, my very soul, I will not let you go anywhere. You are all I have left in this world. I swear it. Tears fell hot onto the floor, one after another. Outside, Detroit kept roaring, cars, smoke, noise, but inside me everything had gone dead quiet except for one single thought. I will fight, whatever the cost. That cursed disease took my wife's life. I will not let it take my daughter's. I will do anything, even if it costs me my own life. Every time Sophia received an infusion, I sat by her bed holding her tiny hand, humming the lullabies Brianna used to sing. Some nights she spiked a fever of 104 degrees Fahrenheit and went into seizures. I'd sprint down the corridor in the dark, screaming for a doctor. Some days she woke up crying, Daddy, it hurts so much. And all I could do was lean down so she could sob into my chest while I bit my lip until it bled. I took unpaid leave day after day. My phone kept ringing from the shop, but I didn't dare answer. After nearly 2 weeks, I finally forced myself to go back and ask for official leave. I put on the cleanest clothes I still owned, shaved, combed my hair, trying to look like a man who still had some control over his life. Keegan Doyle sat behind a desk buried in papers and empty beer cans. He didn't offer me a seat. I stood there, fists clenched, and spoke. Mr. Doyle, my daughter is in the hospital with hereditary bone marrow failure. The doctors say she'll need continuous treatment for at least the next 6 months. I'm asking for unpaid leave so I can take care of her. As soon as she's stable, I'll come back and work double shifts to make it up. He looked up, face red from alcohol. Before I could finish, he slammed a stack of files onto the desk so hard papers flew everywhere. Tate, you think this is a damn daycare? You disappear for months. Who's going to cover your station? The whole line is behind because of you. I warned you 100 times. Keep your family drama out of this shop. This is a garage, not a charity. I fought to keep my voice calm even though rage was boiling inside me. Boss, my daughter is dying. I'm only asking for a few months. A few months? He sneered and jabbed a finger at my chest. You've been half-assing it ever since your wife croaked. Your kid's sick? That's your problem. Don't drag the whole crew down with you, and don't expect me to clean up your mess. Those words stabbed straight through my heart. I stood frozen, blood rushing to my face. Still, I bowed my head, voice hoarse. Please, just one more month. No, he roared, face turning purple. You're fired as of right now. Pack your shit and get out. Don't make me call security. The world collapsed around me. I stood there a few seconds longer, feeling my body fall into an endless abyss. Then I quietly turned, walked out with my final paycheck envelope in hand. Exactly $1,400 in cash after taxes and penalties for unapproved absences. On the drive back to the hospital, tears blurred the road. Losing my job meant losing my health insurance. Losing insurance meant I could no longer afford Sophia's weekly blood transfusions, medications, and tests. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I'll find a way. I have to find a way. A few weeks later, a hospital administrator came to Sophia's room and handed me a thick stack of papers. The provisional bill for the first 3 months of treatment. The final number made my head spin. $190,000. My old company insurance would cover only 12%. The rest was on me. Mr. Tate, you need to pay at least $50,000 within the next 10 days or we will be forced to suspend Sophia's treatment per hospital policy, she said gently, but with the cold detachment of someone who had delivered that line too many times. The phrase, suspend treatment, crushed the air out of my lungs. I nodded, signed the receipt, then collapsed into a chair once she was gone. Sophia was sleeping, her little face pale and sunken under the harsh fluorescent lights. I started selling everything I could. The old Ford went the same night for $3,800. I sold the TV, the living room furniture, even my personal set of mechanics tools I'd spent years collecting. Finally, I put our little house, the one Brianna and I had painted together, planted flowers together, and brought Sophia home to from the maternity ward, up as collateral. The bank gave me $42,000 at brutal interest, but that money only covered 3 blood transfusions and the first round of chemotherapy. 3 weeks later, another bill arrived, $64,000. I borrowed from friends, from old co-workers, even from the loan sharks on the corner of 8 Mile. They just smirked. What else you got to put up, Tate? The house is already gone. My bank account hit zero. My wallet held nothing but a few crumpled 20s. I stopped eating lunch, stopped buying coffee, just tap water and dry bread. One day I passed out in the hospital hallway from anemia and exhaustion. The nurses had to put me on an IV. One late night after Sophia finally fell asleep under heavy sedation, I sat alone on the hallway's plastic chair, head buried in my hands. The white fluorescent lights made everything look even more bleak. I stared into the emptiness and for the first time in my life truly understood what it meant to have absolutely nothing left. I bowed my head and let the tears fall silently onto the cold tile floor. No sound, just quiet surrender. I whispered into the darkness, to Brianna, to myself, Brianna, I'm sorry, I'm so useless. What am I supposed to do now? That was the moment I understood real despair. When the whole world turns its back, when money is gone, when strength is running out, and your little girl still lies there needing every drop of blood, every dollar just to stay alive. I sat like that until dawn, my mind blank. Only one thought kept repeating, I can't give up. Even if I have only one breath left, I have to fight for Sophia. But God, I truly didn't know how much longer I could hold on. Now I have no home, no car, no steady job, no health left, and I'm running out of time. This afternoon, they shoved the latest bill into my hand, another $78,000 due in the next 15 days. I counted the crumpled bills in my wallet over and over, less than $300 total. I let out a dry, hollow laugh in the empty hallway. It sounded more like a sob. From that day on, I lived like a walking corpse. By day, I stayed at the hospital, changing diapers, wiping Sophia's body, spoon-feeding her porridge, singing lullabies, reading picture books. At night, once the painkillers put her to sleep, I went out into the city, fixing cars in the back lots near 8 Mile, unloading containers at suburban warehouses. Some nights I worked straight from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., then caught the first bus back so I'd be there before Sophia opened her eyes. I fell asleep on waiting room chairs on the bus, even standing against a wall while smoking my last cigarette. My body wasted away before my eyes. The jeans that once fit now needed 2 extra holes punched in the belt. My face was gaunt, eyes sunken, beard patchy and wild. One day a nurse thought I was some homeless guy and tried to stop me from entering my own daughter's room. I had to explain before she let me in. But what terrified me most wasn't my own health. It was the hospital bills. Every dollar I earned at night went straight to the cashier's desk. Still, it was a drop in the ocean. The thick stack of invoices in my jacket pocket grew heavier every day, folded like bricks, pressing against my chest until I could barely breathe. I started having blackouts. One night while unloading containers, the world suddenly went dark and I collapsed between the crates. The other workers shook me awake. "You crazy, Tate? You'll kill yourself working like this." I forced a smile and went back to lifting. I wasn't allowed to die. Sophia was still waiting for me. The worst moments weren't when I was exhausted, they were when I sat beside her bed. Sophia was getting thinner by the day, skin stretched over bones, patches of hair falling out from the chemo. Yet every time I walked into the room, she still tried to lift her little hand to wave, still forced a crooked smile. "Daddy, you're back. I missed you so much." I sat down, took that ice-cold hand in mine and pretended to be cheerful, telling her stories about superheroes and princesses, while inside someone was carving my heart out piece by piece. I began to fear myself. I was terrified I wouldn't make it back in time before she called for me. I was terrified that one morning I'd wake up to an empty bed. I was terrified this disease would repeat exactly what it did to Brianna. Slowly, hour by hour, draining the life from the little girl I loved more than my own existence. Some nights after Sophia finally slept, I sat in the hallway and cried alone. Silently, just tears running down my face. In my head, I whispered to Brianna, "Baby, what do I do? I'm not strong enough anymore." And then, in the depths of total desperation, I thought of the very last card I had avoided for years. My parents. I've never said much about them. Porter Tate and Briar Tate, the 2 people who gave me life but never truly acted like parents. Ever since I left home to marry Brianna, our relationship had been nothing more than a few cold phone calls on holidays. They never liked Brianna. They called her that sick girl from the big city. They didn't come to our wedding, didn't come when Sophia was born, and didn't come to Brianna's funeral, but I had no choice left. I called. My mother answered, voice flat. "Hello, Griffin. Been a long time." I asked to meet. She was silent for a few seconds, then agreed. I took the bus to their tidy suburban house in Warren. Everything was exactly the same. Perfectly trimmed lawn, crisp white curtains, the faint smell of cookies in the air. My father opened the door, hair snow white, face stern. My mother stood behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. I stepped inside, hands shaking as I held the stack of medical records and bills. I told them everything about Sophia, the disease, the costs, how I had sold everything I owned. Then I dropped to my knees in the middle of their living room, literally tears streaming. "Please, Mom, Dad, just save your granddaughter. I have nowhere else to turn. Even if you help with just a part of it, I'll work like an animal to pay you back." My father folded his arms and looked down at me, voice cold as ice. "We can't carry all your problems, Griffin. You're a grown man. Take responsibility." My mother cut in, sharper than a blade. "This is the consequence of marrying that girl with diseased blood. I warned you not to get involved, but you didn't listen. Now deal with it yourself. This has nothing to do with us." I couldn't breathe. I looked up at the 2 people who brought me into this world and felt slap after slap across my face. I begged one last time, voice breaking, "She's your granddaughter. Sophia is only 4 years old." My father interrupted, hard as steel. "Griffin, everyone has to answer for their own life. Don't bring this here again." I stood up, stumbled out of the house. I don't remember how I got back. I only know that when I came to, I was sitting on the hospital steps in the freezing November night, fists clenched until the knuckles were white. I realized the bitterest truth of all. In the darkest moment of my life, my own flesh and blood had turned their backs on me and my daughter. The wind cut like knives. I looked up at Detroit's pitch-black sky and whispered, "Brianna, I'm sorry. I can't protect our little girl anymore." I sat there until nearly dawn, shaking from cold and from pain. Only one thought kept looping in my head. Everything has truly collapsed. 3 days later, the true nightmare descended without mercy. The head of hospital administration came straight to Sophia's room and handed me a pink notice, the color I knew was reserved for final hopeless cases. Her voice was gentle but unwavering. "Mr. Tate, we have already extended every possible deadline. Your outstanding balance is now $310,000. If by tomorrow morning you cannot pay at least $120,000 as a deposit for the upcoming bone marrow transplant, we will be forced to discontinue all active treatment. At that point, Sophia will only receive palliative care." I froze. Then I collapsed to my knees in the middle of the hallway, clutching the woman's legs in utter desperation, my voice raw from begging. "Please, I'm begging you, just one more week, even a few days. I'll scrape together the money somehow. I'll sell my blood. I'll do anything. Please don't stop my daughter's treatment. She won't survive." She shook her head, eyes red with sympathy, but her tone had to stay firm and professional. "Mr. Griffin, we've already bent the rules for you far beyond what we're allowed. I'm truly sorry, but hospital policy is hospital policy. There's nothing more we can do." I had no options left. With shaking hands, so violently that my signature looked like a child's scrawl, I signed the discharge papers for palliative care only. A nurse gently carried Sophia out and placed her in my arms. She weighed almost nothing now, just skin over bones, her sunken eyes struggling to open, yet she still managed a faint smile. "Daddy, are we going home? I miss our house so much." I clutched her to my chest and walked out of the hospital on legs that felt like lead. That night was bitterly cold. Our breath turned to white clouds in the air. Sophia began trembling in my arms as another wave of pain hit her. Her tiny fingers dug into my jacket, clinging to life with everything she had left. I sank onto the concrete steps, holding her tight, screaming inside with a helplessness that tore me apart. The world collapsed around me for the second time in my life. And this time it was far crueler than when I lost Brianna. I had nothing left to sell, no one left to beg, not even the strength to stand. I just sat there, rocking my little girl, whispering like a madman, "I'm sorry, baby. Daddy's so sorry. I couldn't protect you, Sophia." At the exact moment I thought I would finally break and never get up again, a pair of polished leather shoes stopped right in front of me. I slowly lifted my head, eyes blurred with tears and exhaustion. It was the old man from the cemetery. He wore the same long black overcoat, silver hair whipping in the wind, eyes red but no longer avoiding mine. This time they looked straight at me with unshakable resolve. "Griffin," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I am Atticus Ravensdale. I am Brianna's biological father, your wife's real father." I went completely still, unable to believe my ears. He continued, each word falling like warm rain in the middle of a blizzard, clear and certain. "I've been watching you since the day we met at the cemetery. I've seen you work yourself to death, sell everything you own, beg on your knees just to save my granddaughter. I stayed silent all this time because I needed to know, truly know, whether the man Brianna chose was weak, selfish, or someone who would crumble. You endured the worst any man could face without a single complaint, without ever giving up. Therefore, I owe you a debt greater than any amount of money in this world." He explained that he had done it all to be absolutely certain, that the man Brianna loved was strong enough to stand after loss, strong enough to raise Sophia, and decent enough never to abandon his family. He hadn't been judging me. He had been learning why his daughter chose me and whether he could trust me with her legacy. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat closed up. No sound came out. Sophia whimpered softly in my arms as another wave of pain hit her. Atticus placed a steady, warm hand on my shoulder, no longer trembling like that day at Brianna's grave. He looked me dead in the eye, his voice ringing with authority. "From this moment on, you will no longer fight alone. Sophia is my flesh and blood granddaughter. I swear I will not let her die." He pulled out his phone and dialed a short number. A few brief, commanding sentences. "Prepare the private ambulance immediately. Transfer Sophia to Mayo Clinic in Chicago. I am personally covering every single expense. Not 1 second of delay." Less than 10 minutes later, priority sirens cut through the night. A gleaming white ambulance, more advanced than anything I'd ever seen, pulled up to the entrance. A professional medical team in special uniforms rushed out, gently lifted Sophia onto a proper stretcher, and administered high-grade pain relief on the spot. Her trembling finally stopped. I followed like a ghost, limbs numb. Atticus told me to get in. His voice rang in my ears like an iron vow. "I've already contacted the top marrow transplant specialists in the world. They're waiting in Chicago. Every test, every treatment, every dollar, I've got it covered. All you have to do is stay with her." I looked at him. For the first time in months, tears fell. Not tears of pain anymore, but tears of stunned, impossible hope. The ambulance sped away. The lights of Detroit faded behind us. Sophia lay on the stretcher, breathing more steadily now thanks to the medication. I held her hand tightly, then turned to Atticus, my voice breaking with overwhelming gratitude. "Why? Why are you doing all of this?" He bowed his head, and for the first time I saw a man of such power tremble with emotion. "Because I lost Brianna once in my life, I will never lose my granddaughter a second time." I couldn't speak another word. I just lowered my head, letting the tears fall onto the back of Sophia's tiny hand, the hand that still held onto mine. For the first time after endless months drowning in bottomless despair, I felt a glimmer of light. Not just any light, but a blazing, brilliant dawn bursting through a door that I thought had slammed shut forever. Sophia is going to live, and I no longer have to fight alone. The days that followed felt like a dream I was terrified to believe was real. Sophia's hospital room was as spacious and luxurious as a high-end apartment, with huge windows overlooking the deep blue waters of Lake Michigan glittering in the sun. The world's best doctors examined her every day. Nurses rotated around the clock, and the most expensive medications were pumped into her veins without me ever having to sign a single bill. Miraculously, Sophia began to recover. Her cheeks turned pink again. Soft baby hair sprouted on her scalp. Her little face filled out, and she beamed ear to ear every time I walked in with flowers or a balloon. Atticus Ravensdale appeared quietly without warning. Some afternoons he would walk in carrying an enormous teddy bear, awkwardly place it on the bed, then sit beside Sophia and tell fairy tales in his gravelly voice. Stories of a princess locked in an icy castle and a prince who broke the evil curse with true love. Sophia listened, spellbound, tugging at his sleeve and begging, "Keep going, Grandpa." Atticus froze for a moment when he heard the word Grandpa. Then he smiled, the first real smile I ever saw from him. Trembling, warm, almost shy, as though he were relearning how to be a grandfather after decades of absence. I often stood outside the door watching them, my heart flooded with gratitude so deep it hurt, mixed with a confusion I couldn't name. I was grateful beyond words for saving my daughter's life. Yet I didn't fully understand the man who had done it. Every gesture, every glance from Atticus radiated a quiet, immense power I had never encountered before. The way he gave the slightest nod and the head of the department bowed in return. The silent bodyguards always a few steps behind him. Even the way he held a glass of water, elegant, aristocratic. He was not an ordinary old man. He was a king trying to learn how to be a simple grandfather. We rarely spoke. When we did cross paths in the hallway or the room, the conversation was short and clumsy. One day, as I returned from the cafeteria with a yogurt for Sophia, he stepped out of her room and asked in his low voice, "How is she eating today?" I answered quickly, voice full of gratitude. She finished 2 whole bowls of soup today, sir, and even asked for more yogurt. He nodded, his eyes softening a little. I bowed my head and added, "Thank you so much. Without you, she would have..." He raised a hand, gently cutting me off, looked toward the door with pain in his eyes, then turned and walked away without another word. Too many questions were piling up inside me. Why had Brianna never clearly mentioned her real father, not even once? Why had he appeared now after all these years? And why did I always feel that he carried an endless sorrow, as if he had lost the entire world long ago and was now trying to gather the broken pieces back one by one? I didn't dare ask. I was afraid those questions would shatter the fragile peace we had found. After more than a month of intensive treatment, the head of the department called me into a private conference room. He smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from any doctor in 2 years of hell, and said, "We have found a 100% compatible marrow donor. The transplant is scheduled for next week. Success rate over 90%. Congratulations, Mr. Tate. Your little girl is going to live." I stood frozen in the middle of the room, tears pouring down uncontrollably. I fell to my knees, thanking him, thanking the nurses, thanking the entire universe for not abandoning us. The day Sophia was discharged, the Chicago sky was flawless, not a single cloud. She wore the brand new pink dress that Atticus's housekeeper had bought her, her hair tied in 2 adorable pigtails. She ran skipping toward the hospital gate, shouting, "Daddy, let's go home!" I scooped her up, kissed her cheeks over and over, tears falling into her hair. I cried from relief, from overwhelming happiness, because I no longer had to live every night in terror. As we reached the entrance, a gleaming black Cadillac Escalade was waiting. A uniformed driver opened the door, bowed respectfully, and said, "Mr. Atticus is expecting you and the young miss at his residence." I stood stunned for a moment, but Sophia squealed with delight and dragged me into the car. The ride was smooth and silent. Within 10 minutes, Sophia was asleep on my lap, exhausted from the long hospital stay. An hour later, the car turned onto a private road lined with towering pines. Massive iron gates slowly opened, and for the first time I saw Atticus Ravensdale's estate. It was dozens of acres of land, an English-style manor of solid stone, a sparkling artificial lake, endless rose gardens, and uniformed guards standing at perfect attention. I was speechless. This was not a house. This was a palace. Atticus waited in the grand living room, a fire crackling warmly in the fireplace, priceless old masters hanging on the walls. A housekeeper carried the sleepy Sophia upstairs to rest. I sat across from him, hands clasped tightly from nerves and emotion. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey from an ancient bottle, slid one toward me, and asked in a low, warm voice, "Can you handle it, Griffin?" I nodded, though I had never tasted whiskey that fine in my life. He looked me straight in the eye, took a deep breath, and began telling me everything. "I am Atticus Ravensdale, owner of Ravensdale Distillery. My fortune is large enough to buy the entire city of Detroit if I wished, but money has never been able to buy back what I lost in this life." He told me about Catherine, his first wife, Brianna's real mother. She had suffered from the same cursed hereditary bone marrow disease that later struck Brianna and Sophia. 25 years ago, he was obsessed with building his empire, flying across Europe, signing billion-dollar deals, leaving his wife and daughter alone. He never noticed Catherine fading day by day, never saw 16-year-old Brianna caring for her mother in the hospital alone, crying until she had no tears left. When Catherine died, he remarried only 6 months later to Cassandra, a beautiful, ambitious younger woman. That was the final straw. At 18, Brianna ran away from home in unbearable pain, cut all contact, even changed her last name so he could never find her. "I lived more than 20 years in regret and self-torment," he said, voice breaking. "I hired private investigators everywhere, but she was too good at disappearing. Until one day I received her final letter." He pulled an old yellowed envelope from a drawer and handed it to me with trembling hands. I opened it with shaking fingers. It was Brianna's handwriting. I recognized it instantly, though weak and shaky from illness. Dear Father, I know I will soon leave this world just like Mother did. I have never forgiven you for choosing money, status, and that woman over your family. But if there is any conscience left in you, please find Griffin Tate and Sophia, my husband and daughter. They are everything I have in this life. Please protect them for me for the years I will no longer be here to walk beside them. Your daughter, Brianna. Tears fell onto the paper, blurring the last lines. I looked up at Atticus. He sat across from me, eyes red, hands trembling on the table. This is my last chance to redeem a lifetime of mistakes. I lost Brianna once. I will never lose Sophia. And you, Griffin, again. From this moment on, you are my son-in-law in every way that matters. Sophia is the legitimate granddaughter of the Ravensdale family. I will use everything I have to make up for what you and she have suffered. I couldn't speak. I only bowed my head deeply, tears falling onto the priceless Persian rug beneath my feet. For the first time in my life, I understood that miracles are not made of money or power. A miracle is when a father who lost his daughter once decides to spend the rest of his life loving his granddaughter in the way he never managed to love her mother. And I, Griffin Tate, a broke mechanic from Detroit, was now sitting in a palace holding the hand of a billionaire who was crying from remorse, knowing that my daughter had been saved. Not because of money, but because of a love that came late, yet was never too late. After that conversation, Atticus pulled me into a long, tight embrace. He said nothing more. He simply patted my back the way a father does when he's finally reunited with a son after years apart. Then he called the housekeeper to bring Sophia down. She came barreling into the room and threw herself into her grandfather's arms, giggling wildly as he lifted her high into the air. I stood watching, tears rolling down my cheeks, tears of pure happiness this time. That same night, in the presence of his entire household staff and family attorneys, Atticus formally declared that I was his legitimate son-in-law and that Sophia was the sole granddaughter and heir of the Ravensdale line. Papers were signed, notarized, and sealed before midnight. I asked for nothing, yet he still transferred a very large sum into a brand new account opened in my name, telling me with a soft smile that it was late child support for my granddaughter. He refused to let me return to a life of back-breaking labor for low wages and toxic conditions. When I told him about Keegan Doyle and how he had fired me without a shred of mercy, Atticus merely nodded once. His eyes turned icy, but his voice stayed calm. Leave that to me. 3 days later, the news exploded across Detroit. Ravensdale Distillery Group had acquired full ownership of Doyle Mechanical Works at a price 15% above market value. No one could understand why a whiskey empire would suddenly buy a rundown old garage. On the day the takeover was officially announced, I wore my very first custom-tailored suit, measured and sewn overnight by Atticus's personal tailor. I walked into the same large meeting room that once reeked of oil and Doyle shouting. 100 pairs of eyes turned to me. Keegan Doyle sat at the head of the table, red-faced from beer, bragging about his weekend fishing trip, when the MC announced, "And effective today, the new chief executive officer of what is now Tate Ravensdale Industries is Mr. Griffin Tate." The room fell dead silent. I stepped onto the platform and looked straight at Doyle. His mouth hung open, the color drained from his face as if he'd seen a ghost. The coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the table, dark liquid splashing everywhere. He stammered, "Tate? How the hell?" I simply smiled, said nothing, and started the presentation. A 20% across-the-board raise, comprehensive health insurance, safer working conditions, an on-site daycare for employees' children, generous year-end bonuses. The room erupted in thunderous applause. Only Doyle sat frozen like a statue. When the meeting ended, everyone filed out buzzing with excitement. I walked into what used to be Doyle's office, now mine. He was still sitting there, bloodless and shaking. Suddenly he dropped to his knees, grabbed my legs and sobbed, "Griffin, forgive me. I've got a wife and kids. If I lose this job now, my family will starve. Please let me stay. I'll do anything." I stood still for a long moment. Old memories flooded back, me on my knees in this very office begging for a few days off to save my dying daughter, only to be humiliated and thrown out like trash in front of the whole crew. I looked down at the trembling man clinging to my shoes and remembered every word he had spat at me. Dragging your family drama into work? I don't keep useless dead weight. I could have fired him with a single signature. One stroke of a pen and he would lose everything. But I didn't. I sat down in the chair and said calmly, "Stand up, Mr. Doyle." He looked up, eyes shining with desperate hope. "I will keep you on. But on one condition. You completely change the way you manage people. You treat every employee with decency. No more yelling, no more intimidation. Everything will be put in writing and you will sign it. I will personally oversee you for the first 6 months. One violation, just one, and you're gone immediately. Do we have a deal?" He nodded frantically, still on his knees, and signed the agreement Atticus's lawyers had prepared in advance. He wept. Thank you, Mr. Tate. I'll change. I won't let you down." Word spread through the shop like wildfire. Griffin Tate, the guy who had once been kicked out like garbage, was now the boss, and he hadn't taken revenge. The men who once watched me get humiliated now greeted me with genuine respect and bowed heads. Under my leadership, the shop transformed day by day. I implemented everything I had ever dreamed of when I was just a worker. Higher wages, full medical coverage, free daycare, big bonuses. I walked the floor every single day, shook every man's hand, learned the names of their wives and kids, asked about their families, and helped when they were in trouble. In just 6 months, revenue doubled, the highest in 20 years. We landed major contracts with the big automakers and added brand new production lines. From a shop on the verge of bankruptcy, Tate Ravensdale Industries became the place every mechanic in Detroit dreamed of working. And I, Griffin Tate, the worker who had once been thrown out without pity, was now the boss that every employee loved, trusted, and respected with all their hearts. I thought everything had finally settled into place. Then the storm hit. From inside my new family. The news that Atticus had officially recognized me as his son-in-law and Sophia as his legitimate granddaughter spread across every major financial newspaper within days. Exactly 1 week later, the Ravensdale family's private jet flew in from Paris and landed at their private airstrip. Cassandra Ravensdale, Atticus's second wife, and her son Quentin immediately stepped off the plane and told reporters they had returned to resolve family matters. Cassandra was 59, strikingly beautiful in that sharp European aristocrat way. Golden hair, perfect makeup, but eyes as cold as ice. She had spent decades living on yachts and in Monaco villas, treating Atticus not as a husband but as an inexhaustible bank account. Quentin was 29, 7 years younger than me. Tall, handsome in a spoiled playboy way, but with the permanent scowl of someone terrified of losing his inheritance. From childhood, he had been told the entire Ravensdale empire would one day be his, and he had never accepted the existence of some illegitimate half-sister. They didn't bother meeting me first. They hired private investigators, dug through my past, and leaked stories to tabloids and financial forums. Gold digger uses dying daughter to scam billionaire. Poor mechanic fakes dead wife to seize fortune. Mysterious son-in-law drops from the sky with plans to steal the inheritance. I read the headlines and only smiled sadly. I gave no interviews, posted nothing online, offered no explanations. I drove Sophia to school, went to work, came home, cooked dinner, and read her bedtime stories. I trusted that time and truth would speak for themselves. Then one Saturday afternoon, Atticus called. "Griffin, bring Sophia to the estate for dinner tonight. I have a gift for her." I happily agreed. Sophia put on her favorite princess dress and clutched the picture she had spent all week coloring. Our family. The moment our car stopped in front of the grand entrance, the massive doors swung open. I carried Sophia down and she shouted, "Grandpa!" But the second we stepped inside, I froze. Atticus sat at the head of the table, face carved from stone. Across from him sat Cassandra and Quentin, dressed to kill, both glaring like they were ready to tear someone apart. Cassandra looked me up and down and smirked, voice dripping with poisoned honey. "So you're the famous, beloved son-in-law he keeps talking about?" I did my research. Griffin Tate, unemployed mechanic. Wife died of a poor person's disease, disowned by his own parents. And now, poof, future billionaire. Bravo. Quite the performance. Quentin shot to his feet and jabbed a finger in my face. "You think you can use that sick kid to butter up my father and call it a day?" "Brianna was nothing but a teenage mistake. You're stealing my inheritance. I'll sue you. I'll drag you through every court, you gold-digging piece of—" Sophia shrank against my leg, eyes filling with tears. I rested a calming hand on her shoulder, then looked straight at them and answered calmly. "Brianna was Atticus's biological daughter. DNA proved it. I have never asked for a single dollar. All I wanted was for Sophia to be officially recognized as his granddaughter so she wouldn't grow up feeling abandoned the way her mother did. Whatever Mr. Atticus chooses to do with his estate is entirely his decision." Cassandra threw her head back and laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. "Recognized? So you can split the fortune, right? Spare us the noble act." Quentin took another step forward, face crimson. "I'll make you and that brat disappear. Don't you dare touch 1 cent of Ravensdale money. It's mine." Atticus had been silent the entire time, hands resting on the table, expression unreadable. The instant Quentin snarled the word mine, Atticus slammed his palm onto the ancient mahogany so hard the bang echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Everyone froze. He rose slowly, voice so cold the air seemed to crystallize. "Silence, all of you, silence." He turned first to Cassandra. "You married me for money. I've always known that, and I never blamed you for it. But if you ever open your mouth again about inheritance while I'm still breathing, I will cancel every credit card, sell every villa, and put you on a plane back to Europe with nothing but the clothes on your back. Would you like to test me?" Cassandra went white, lips trembling, but no sound came out. Then he turned to Quentin, voice even more terrifying. "And you, the son I spoiled rotten. You've never worked a single day in your life, only spent money and chased women. Brianna was my daughter, my flesh and blood. Sophia is my granddaughter. If you ever lay a finger on either of them, tomorrow morning I will rewrite my will. You will receive not 1 penny, not 1 share, not 1 bottle from the cellar. I will donate everything to charity. Do you believe I won't?" Quentin stumbled backward, face ashen. "Dad, you can't be serious. You're joking, right?" Atticus didn't answer him. He simply turned to me, voice softening. "Griffin, take Sophia upstairs to the playroom. I'll handle this." I carried Sophia up the grand staircase. She buried her face in my neck and whispered, "Daddy, that lady is so mean." I kissed her forehead. "It's okay, princess. Grandpa will protect us." 1 week later, every smear story vanished overnight. Atticus publicly released Brianna's and Sophia's DNA results on the front page of every major paper, along with Brianna's final letter. He hired the best libel attorneys in America and sued the tabloids into silence. The Midwest, where family still means something, turned on Cassandra and Quentin with a vengeance. #ProtectSophia trended #1 in Michigan for 3 straight days. Cassandra and Quentin couldn't withstand the public disgust and the contempt of their own high society friends. They quietly boarded the jet back to Europe, suitcases stuffed with designer clothes and a lifetime supply of humiliation. Their place in the Ravensdale dynasty was no longer as secure as they had always believed. After that confrontation, I did not move into Atticus's palace. I only asked him for a simple house on the outskirts of Detroit, a 2-story red brick home with a maple tree in the front yard, a swing, and a small vegetable patch in the back. Atticus laughed heartily. "My son-in-law, I own entire forests and you ask for a bird's nest." Yet he bought it the very next day and personally chose the cozy furniture in the style Brianna had always loved. We moved in on a spring morning. Sophia ran through every room screaming with joy. Her own bedroom painted soft pink, a bookshelf overflowing with fairy tales, and a golden retriever named Sunny that Atticus threw in as a bonus. I stood in the middle of the warm living room holding my daughter and cried, not from sorrow this time, but because I could finally give her a real home. No more antiseptic smell, no more beeping monitors. Sophia grew stronger every day. She gained weight, her cheeks turned rosy, her hair grew so fast she needed 2 haircuts in a single year. I enrolled her in the best private school in the area, one with sprawling playgrounds, music classes, and art studios. Every afternoon when I picked her up, she would come running, throw her arms around my legs and show me her drawings, tell me about new friends, or proudly wave the first-place ribbon from the storytelling contest. Once she asked, "Daddy, can Mommy see that I'm all better now?" I hugged her tight. "She can, sweetheart. She's watching you from heaven." Work at the shop continued to flourish. I kept improving everything I had once lacked as a worker. Performance-based raises, 100% family health coverage, a scholarship fund for employees' children, an on-site clinic with a full-time doctor, and most importantly, paid sick leave for when a child is ill. No deductions, no questions. I remembered every drop of sweat I had poured out without recognition, so I refused to let anyone else in that shop go through the same. The men called me Mr. Tate with genuine respect in their voices. One old mechanic who had worked beside me 10 years earlier grabbed my hand and cried, "Back then I watched you get kicked out and could only look away in shame. Now you're the boss and I'm so damn proud of you, Griff." I patted his shoulder. "You're still my senior, Uncle." Atticus began spending more time in Detroit than in Chicago. He bought a penthouse near our house, but he came over nearly every day. He took Sophia to the park, the zoo for ice cream, and read her to sleep. Some nights I'd come home late and find him on the couch, my daughter asleep on his chest, still holding Little Red Riding Hood halfway through a page. He'd look up with an embarrassed grin. "I tell it better than you, don't I?" I laughed and sat beside him. "I surrender, old man." Watching grandfather and granddaughter together was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. Atticus taught Sophia to ride horses, to play piano, and even how to plant roses. The same flowers he once grew with Catherine and Brianna long ago. He told her stories about Grandma Catherine and about her mommy when she was little, his voice trembling yet his eyes shining with happiness. Sophia wrapped her arms around his neck. "I love you most in the whole world, Grandpa," Atticus cried the first time I ever saw him cry from joy. Standing outside the door watching them, my heart felt light as air. Our family, once shattered, had healed in the most beautiful way possible. Then one early autumn day, the past knocked again. I was fixing Sophia's swing when the doorbell rang. I opened it and froze. My biological parents stood there. My father had aged terribly, back bent, hair snow white. My mother was skeletal, eyes sunken, clutching a cheap gift bag. They smiled awkwardly. "Griffin, how are you, son? We heard you'd made it big." I silently invited them in. Sophia was playing with Sunny in the backyard. I poured water and sat across from them. They poured out their story. Leaking roof, Dad's heart condition, Mom's arthritis, no money for medicine, neighbors mocking them because their rich son never looked back. They said they had been helpless back then, afraid of deeper poverty. Now they wanted to mend the family then. I listened, heart cold as stone, and I remembered the day I knelt in their living room clutching Sophia's medical files, begging for even a fraction of the hospital costs. I remembered my mother saying, "It's the consequence of marrying that sick girl." I remembered my father's icy words, "You're grown, deal with it." I looked them straight in the eye, voice calm but firm. "You are simply reaping what you sowed all those years ago. You turned your backs when your son and granddaughter needed you most. Now you return because I have money. That's not reconciliation. That's opportunism. I'm sorry, but I can't." They cried, begged, pleaded. I still shook my head. The calls kept coming after that. Money for medicine, for roof repairs, for living expenses, for doctor visits. I refused everyone, more firmly each time. I understood clearly. True reconciliation comes from the heart, not from a bank account. I blocked their numbers and cut contact completely. Not out of hatred, but to protect Sophia from toxic relationships that could hurt her later. One golden autumn afternoon, I sat on the porch watching the yard. Atticus was pushing Sophia on the swing. She was laughing wildly, hair flying in the wind. Sonny ran circles around them, barking with joy. Atticus looked over and gave me a thumbs up. Sophia shouted, "Higher, Grandpa!" Higher. I smiled, tears rolling down my cheeks. Real family isn't decided by blood. Family is the people willing to trade their entire lives to protect each other. It's the ones who choose to stay when the whole world walks away. It's the ones who love without conditions. I lost Brianna. I once lost everything. But now I have Sophia, my healthy little princess, laughing in the golden sunlight. And I have Atticus, the father fate gave me late, but exactly when I needed him most. My life didn't just return to normal. It became far more beautiful, far more complete, and far more meaningful than I ever thought possible. And I know somewhere Brianna is smiling down on us. There are nights when I sit alone on the porch after Sophia has fallen asleep and Atticus has returned to his penthouse, when I quietly look back over the entire journey I've walked. I realize that the darkest years, the days when I thought I could never rise again, were the forge that shaped me into the man I am today. Every tear that fell in the hospital corridors, every sleepless night beside my daughter's bed, every time my own flesh and blood turned their backs on me, all of it carved strength into my bones. They did not destroy me. They taught me how to stand up, how to love more fiercely, and how to treasure every moment of peace I once took for granted. I learned that the people who truly love you will stay by your side even when the whole world walks away. Sophia, my tiny 4-year-old, held on to me with weak little arms through waves of pain, whispering, "Daddy, don't cry," in her half-conscious delirium. Atticus, a man who had once been estranged from his own blood, stepped forward at the exact moment I was about to collapse. He opened his arms and embraced us both without a single question or condition. He didn't come because I had money or anything to offer. He came because he saw us as family, and that alone was enough to pull me out of the abyss I thought would swallow me forever. I came to understand deep in my soul that kindness is never weakness. It is the bravest choice a person can make in the face of injustice and hatred. When Doyle knelt at my feet begging for a second chance, I could have crushed him the way he once crushed me. Instead, I chose mercy. I chose to give him the opportunity to change. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to become the man he once was. Kindness is the most powerful weapon of all. It can transform the person who hurt you, and it keeps your own heart from being poisoned by hatred. I also learned that forgiveness is not about excusing those who harmed you. It is about freeing yourself from the past so you can walk forward unburdened. I forgave Cassandra and Quentin not because they were right, but because I refused to carry the weight of resentment into the home where Sophia is growing up day by day. I forgave my biological parents not because I forgot their words, but because I no longer wanted that pain to hold me prisoner. Forgiveness was me unlocking the cell I had built for myself out of old wounds. From my birth parents, I learned a painful but priceless lesson. Not everyone who brings you into the world knows how to love you properly. Some parents stop at giving birth. They never walk the longer road of raising and loving. For a long time, I tormented myself wondering why they abandoned me when their son and granddaughter needed them most. Now I understand. It was not my fault. It was their limitation. Walking away from them was the only way to protect my daughter from the same hurt I felt as a child. Cutting ties was not unfilial. It was self-preservation, the healthiest choice, so that Sophia's future would not be overshadowed by the darkness of the past. I want Sophia to grow up with 3 truths carved into her heart. Real love has no conditions. Kindness is the greatest strength, and honesty is the most precious treasure on earth. I will not let her carry the pain of previous generations like a heavy backpack. Every night before sleep, I whisper in her ear, "You are the strongest princess Daddy has ever known. You never have to be afraid of anything because Daddy and Grandpa will always be here forever. I believe life sometimes strips everything away. Money, health, loved ones, just to test whether you are strong enough to stand up again for the people you love. That is the harshest test, but also the final test of your humanity. If you pass it, you discover that the most precious thing is not what you lost, but who remains beside you when everything has burned to ash. And if you are reading these words tonight while drowning in despair, buried in debt, abandoned by family, crushed by illness, or simply feeling there is no way out, please hear me. There is always another path waiting ahead of you. There is always a door standing slightly ajar that you cannot yet see because darkness is blocking your view. There is always someone you may not have met yet, who still believes in you, even when you have stopped believing in yourself. So do not let go. Keep breathing. Keep taking one small step each day, because at the end of the darkest road there is always light waiting, and that light is not money or power. That light is love. The only thing that never dies, no matter how much the world collapses. I am Griffin Tate. I once lost everything, and I found everything again in the most beautiful way possible. So please don't give up, because tomorrow just might be the day your miracle arrives.